Hi, everyone. I don't know if everyone's on yet, but I'm seeing some familiar faces, which is great. I just, boy, do I wish we were in person, but maybe we couldn't have had this kind of a gathering. So pardon the technical difficulties. This is the first time this has happened with this particular format. So we apologize, but I want to jump in. Is everyone on, Natalie?
Looks like a lot of people are.
I think we've got most. We've got a good quorum, and there may be a few who are.
And we'll wait for Miriam. Miriam will hop on in a minute, we hope. Anyway, welcome. Welcome to the Zoom world, which I'm afraid we're going to be existing in for a while. And it's so nice to be back. Oh, yay, Miriam. We just started. These are my NAB, National Advisory Board colleagues. And I just wanted to say welcome. And I'm so pleased that you were able to share this film. It's a film I wanted to share with the NAB for a long time, made by my good friend and prestigious documentarian, Joe Gantz. And for those of you who might be new, who don't know me, I'm Nancy Stevens, and I'm on the board of trustees of the Union of Concerned Scientists. And my favorite question is always, oh, are you a scientist? And I get to say, no, I'm the concerned part of the scientists. And if this film is so inspiring to me because it speaks to the human element of people that are really conscious about what we have to do and how dramatic we have to be in doing this. And my friend Joe and I met through politics. I think we were hosting something for Senator Jeff Merkley, who has been a climate champion since he was in the Oregon State House. And so Joe and I connected politically, as well as just the belief that documentary film can change hearts and minds and show people another way or invite them into a new atmosphere. And Joe's an award-winning filmmaker. He's won an Emmy and been nominated for 4. And his documentary films have addressed so many issues that are important to us, whether it's about the middle class and the shrinking middle class, or his latest, which is about stem cell research and how that's going to change the future of dire medical conditions. It's really an extraordinary film. So we're so lucky to have him, and so lucky to have 2 other participants who I know you got to know as you watched this film, Aji Pipper and Miriam Kashia. And we're so grateful that you've joined us. And instead of me telling you about them, I would love to have them share some of their thoughts about what's engaged them in this incredible fight. But right now I'll start, and then you were invited to text questions as you have ideas and things that you would like explained. But I'm going to start with a question for Joe. And tell us a bit about what drove you to this particular film and Race to Save the World, how the name came about, and what you hope our audience takes away from it.
Well, there have been a number of very powerful films dealing with climate change. However, most of them feel like what they need to do is educate the public to how bad things are and how much worse they're going to get, and that will inspire people to get off the sidelines, get involved, and do whatever they can. And that makes a lot of sense. However, this message, when done in a documentary film with these incredible visuals and powerful text and whatnot, it can be so overwhelming and depressing that it doesn't get people. Well, some people certainly see it as a call to action, but other people just feel like this is just too much for me. I barely can handle my life as it is. So let me see if I can tune this out and go about my life. I agree with it. I hope someone deals with it, but I can't sort of wrap my mind around that. I felt that if we followed people who are in the trenches, who are sort of the type of people that cannot tune this out, who have no choice but to face it head on and do what they can, that that would energize people to get involved and to get in the streets and do what they can to draw attention to this issue. Everyone doesn't need to do what Miriam did and walk around across the United States, or do what Michael did and turn off a pipeline, and do what Aji did to be a part of these two important court cases. But everybody can do something. And my feeling is, I read this article, which I sent to Nancy, that was in the newspaper today, about how the oceans have gone past the point of no return. And you read that and you're just like, oh my God, it's like getting a gut punch. But when you see, the people in this film and their energy and motivation to just do everything they can, I think it inspires us and energizes us to get off the sidelines, get in the streets, and make our voices heard for a livable future. And my thoughts are, until tremendous numbers of people, take to the streets and make the politicians and the governments pay attention, they're going to go incrementally and kind of
and it'll be
kill
too
us by 1,000 tiny cuts.
Right. I want to just tell Aji and Miriam that in the chat, you are being lauded for what you've done and considered heroes, as I consider both of you. And one of the things about the film that made me want to be involved with it, and I see my friend Kathy Washenko there, who
Hello, Kathy.
The minute I saw the kayaks in Seattle, I thought, here's some person who's going to want to know about this film and help get it out to the world. But one of the exciting things to me was that it showed the breadth of age. It's intergenerational, and that's so important. And I told Aji, I'm so glad to see him on this call, because so often we don't see the young people that, much more lately. But I'm curious as to how Joe approached you and how you felt about his wanting to engage you for the film. And also, Aji, if you could touch on the music that you and your brother have used for the film. I found that just incredibly inventive and a wonderful way to sort of clear your spirit to make the kind of commitment that you've done.
Yeah,
I actually met you, Aji, when you were just, remember when they were trying to stop the trains during that protest, and the police came and shut it down, they had shut a railroad track, and you were just on your megaphone singing, chanting, and that is in the film. But you had no idea who I was, and I just came up to you and introduced myself. That's where we met.
All right, so that was Break Free at Anacortes, and it was a protest against the Cherry Point or Anacortes. No, Cherry Point's a different one. It's the Anacortes refinery. They refine a ton of crude oil there. It smells awful, and it's right by a Native American reservation, I believe. It's like very close to like Native community. And just that it's a devastating affect for the communities there. So yeah, people shut down the railroad tracks. They had these like teepee tent things that they had set up on the tracks, or not teepee, but like stilted tents is what I meant to say. And yeah, so I remember that. At that time, I think that was like the peak of my like protest time. Like I was going to the most protests in that time of my life, and I was talking to the most film and like news and media. And so I I don't think it was like, I don't know, Joe, he just kind of fit right in with the crowd of that. Like I was like, sure, like more engagement is better.
Yeah.
So and then I mean, using songs as protest material are things, that's something that's been done for like quite some time.
Yeah.
You know, there's protest songs that are very, very old. I can't even pull them off the top of my head, but I know that they're there. Like songs are an intrinsic part of most cultures in the world. And there, you know, there's just something that like connects to people very easily. Like we all listen to music, we all enjoy music, and there's a level that like allows us to hear that without just to hear messages more clearly when they're delivered
Yes.
in a.
No, I agree with you. I mean, and you and your brother can create the anthem for the new generation, because we're in this big fight, and it's so important that you continue your activism. And Miriam, you've had a really interesting career, always as an activist, but as a therapist. And I love the story. Maybe, I don't know if bios were shared with people, but you went to the Peace Corps at a point in your life. You said that was the hardest thing you've ever done, but that walk across the country looks like it might have been the hardest thing too. And I'd love to have your take on inviting Joe into your world so that we could all appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you for the question. You know, I can't point to a single moment when I became an activist, but I can talk about years and years and years of following what I was paying attention to from the Sierra Club and nature magazines, and about the degradation of our planet through toxins, and then climate change started creeping in. And I spent 5 months one summer up in Alaska after I retired, working as a volunteer at a state historical park. And driving home from Alaska, I had a long time to think about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I was probably in my late 60s at that point. And about the time I got to Denver on my way back to Iowa, I decided that it had to be climate. That was where I was going to put my energy, because I felt that was the biggest threat there was. And of course, everything's interconnected, and I understand that intersectionality. But I had no idea how big and broad and deep and bad the climate crisis was going to take me. And the Peace Corps, I retired from my psychotherapy practice when I was 65 in 2005, and went to Namibia in Africa for 2 years with the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps likes to say it's the hardest job you'll ever love, and I think I can attest to that. One day, after I got home from my Alaska sojourn, I'm an adventurer, you can tell that.
Yes.
I was on my computer. This was after I got back from a rally in Nebraska for the KXL pipeline, which was kind of my first foray out of my comfort zone. And there was this link on my computer. I don't even know where it came from, but I touched it, and it took me to this thing called the Great March for Climate Action. And within a minute, I had decided I would do this. I thought,
Wow.
I bet I could do that. 71, I took off across the country, and I walked for 8 months, 3,000 miles, about 7 million steps, to try and raise the alarm across the country about the dangerous thing that was happening.
Well, you are an inspiration, and I love the idea of your being in your 60s, really making a plan for what am I going to do the rest of my life. And retirement is a word I don't know or understand, and I see that you agree. Before we get back to Joe, I wanted to, what was also so poignant about this film, and not necessarily Miriam's aspect, but this activism affects your family and friends, and kind of a different trajectory of, and I'm wondering, Aji, how that affected you and your schoolwork, your friends. I know it left your mom worried at times, for sure, you know, because you were out there with your brother in places that could have been very dangerous.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Uh, that was, I don't know, it's like school definitely suffered because of how much I was doing activism.
Mhm.
But I think it was a, like, personally, I feel like it was more like a combination of, like, I just had trouble with the school system in general already. And then so devoting more time outside of school, um, to things not school just didn't help me, like, succeed in that way. So it suffered some. Uh, I just, yeah. Um, Activism. So when I was younger, activism was definitely this thing that I viewed as a thing that I do, right? That's activism to me was when I go out and talk to people about these issues that I'm concerned about. Activism was to me when I was younger, when I went and lobbied to my representatives in government, and were like, hey, you need to take care of my future. Activism to me when I was younger was making these songs and performing them at protests. And I think um, because it's like this thing that I did, and because of the stigma that society carries around what activism means, it's an engineered stigma by the people who don't want activists active and who don't want the populace to educate themselves about these issues, whether it's corporations interests in this, or government who just wants it quiet or follows the money interests of the corporation, or corporations. Like, at some point, activism became this, like, stigma, this, like, oh, you're an activist. And so it never was something that I really communicated to my peers, that, like, oh, this is something I do, right? It was never something that they would understand, because they weren't activists, right? That wasn't something that they did. So that's something that was difficult for me as a kid. Nowadays, I think that activism needs to be treated more like those, in a way that we carry ourselves in general, right? That the climate crisis is not just this thing to tackle, but that it really is an underpinning of an improper handling of our own resources, of an improper thinking about our own resources. That, like, we need to be, sustainability isn't this, like, a bullet list of actions that, like, that is sustainability, and it's not necessarily even this, like, huge change or need to think of the world like, I don't know how to, I just feel like in my mind now, it's more like a way that we think about things in our lives, rather than like some people will hear arguments for sustainability and think that what we're asking them to do is go back to horse and buggy.
Right.
We're living in the woods, with no electricity or running water. And that's not what it is in any way. But what it is when you're eating food, when you are buying products, when you are driving your vehicle or getting to work, however the transportation is, thinking about, like, the way that these resources are used. Like, when we drive alone in a car that can hold 4 people, how much energy are we wasting?
Right. Right.
Like, if it was available, wouldn't it be nice to have a public transportation system that is reliable? Right? I know that it's nice to have your own car and it's freeing, but it's also really freeing to just be on foot, not have to worry about parking, just be able to hop station anywhere and get anywhere in the city that you need. Like, that's also super freeing. And so it's an ethos. It's a way that, the way as a society we consider our resources and how they intrinsically link with us. It's a way as a society that we consider the environment. So that's activism then and activism now.
Right. And I love your holistic approach. And I really hope that you are and I'm sure, I don't even know, I'm sure you're an inspiration to a lot of young people who are really, whether it's the Sunrise Movement, but I know those that I do know in that part of the movement feel a huge weight too. And I want to get to Joe to see if you want to discuss anything that Miriam and Aji have talked about, or anyone in particular. And then I want to open it up to make sure that our audience can, because I have 100 questions that I could ask, but I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask something.
Well, I can relate to what Aji said about how when someone is an activist, conservatives will try to make that seem like that's something outrageous and that you could make fun of, instead of it being something that these are people who, look at our world and think, how can we improve it, and how can we improve, our situation with climate change or whatever else. I was so surprised. The film was on Film Week in Los Angeles, and on Film Week in Los Angeles, they pick like 5 top blockbuster films to talk about. It's very prestigious to get on it, and one documentary. And I thought, wow, this is great. We're getting great press here. And the person who they have different reviewers they invite on each week were actually saying how, these activists in the film, they take themselves so seriously. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Of all the things you could say about this film, these people are putting themselves out. They're, going to great lengths. They're, putting so much pressure on their families, their relationships, their jobs, their, in order to do what they can. And, they take themselves so seriously. It's like, they'll take a word like woke and they'll turn it around backwards and make it something else. It is something that we all need. In order for this to work, we need everyone to get involved. Not everyone to get involved to the extent that the people in this film maybe, got involved, but everyone needs to do their part. And so, making it sort of normal to be an activist would be a good first step.
Absolutely. Oh, Aji?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that this is another one of those things, of like an example of what I was saying with like, I don't know, I can't speak for every activist, but myself, it didn't feel like a choice to put a pressure on my family or a weight on myself. It was that there is a weight on me because I am young and because this is the reality of the world and how the future will lay out. And I have only a few ways to deal with this weight, right? To step out and say something about it, or to stay quiet and be crushed by these feelings, right? It wasn't like, I don't know, there's never really this moment where I thought of myself as some like savior, or like I was taking action, like, oh, I'm doing so good. It was like, fuck, pardon my language, but fuck. And it's something that continues all the way until today. Like, there's not a moment where I was wanting to be up in the limelight as an activist. There was not a moment where I was wanting to be in the public spotlight and wanting people to look at me. I was like, honestly, I would much prefer it if this is not a thing I had to do. If this is not a thing I felt like I was in a position where I needed to do. Like, I cannot be anywhere else but here, because I can't deal with the emotional reality without feeling like I'm doing something about it. As something, as I've matured, I definitely have a driving need to be in the streets all the time. Otherwise, I can't deal with the emotional reality of it. But it doesn't change the fact that reality is still the way it is.
Yeah.
That's
so powerful, Aji, because
So true.
I felt that in the film, and Joe and I have talked about this, that some people just emotionally, psychologically have no choice. I mean, I feel that way in terms of electoral politics. It's like a passion that it's not a hobby. It's just, I can't give it up because I see it as part of the solution. And I see that there is a point in so many people's lives, and Miriam, what an incredible decision. And I think there is the inability to tune out. And there's also what Miriam said in the film that I love is activism is the antidote to despair.
Yeah.
And I think
love that.
that's what keeps me going sometimes when I'm asking people for money, and it's like, it's not for me, it's for the whole world and a better cause. Being active is what keeps me from going down to the dark tunnel of despair. And I see how your activism, and I hope, Aji, you found an incredibly loving community among other activists. I hope so. I'm trying to, does somebody have a
I'd like
question
to add
here?
a couple of words. May I?
Pardon?
May I add a couple of words here?
Sure, absolutely.
I absolutely respect and honor and understand, I think, where Aji's coming from. And what I'd like to point out is that activism is a continuum. It isn't one thing. Every time I turn on a light or a faucet, I think about what I'm doing. And I've been arrested 4 times since the climate march for climate activism, mostly against pipelines here in Iowa.
Yeah.
And that's at the other end of the spectrum. But the way we live our lives, and I think that's what Aji is saying here, the way we live our lives is what sustainability is all about. It's what activism is all about. And some of us can step a long ways outside our comfort zone, get out of our box and do crazy things and put our lives on the line. And other people aren't built that way, but we can all make this the center of our focus with everything we do in our lives.
I completely agree. Kim Stone, you wanted to bring up an issue, and it's probably better for you to bring it up. Where are you, Kim?
Sure. Hi, I'm here. As I said in the message I sent to you, Nancy, I'm sort of struggling with how to ask this question. How do we better explain why it's okay to protest when it comes to climate, but it's not okay to protest things like vaccine mandates for COVID and mask requirements? Is it simply just that one thing is truth and science and the other is not? Or are there other ways that we can better explain why it's okay?
Oh, go ahead, Aji.
That contrary, as like an unpopular opinion, I think it's fine if people protest vaccine mandates and masks as long as they are wearing masks and getting vaccinated. Right? Situation, protesters are not endangering, the climate protesters are not endangering the lives of their communities. And in another situation, those people are, because not only are they protesting, but they're refusing to take safety measures that are absolutely necessary to protect the vitality of our community. And that's a totally, like, that is something that should be separated. That it's like, it's fine to not want to do this, but when not doing something becomes dangerous to the community around you, it's not fine, right? It's like, it's fine to not want to drive the speed limit. Does that mean you get to just drive 70 wherever you want? Like, that's a danger to people everywhere. You just become a danger to your community. It's fine to not want to have to not drink and drive. Does that mean that we accept people not drinking and driving? No, it's totally different, right? You could stand all you want on the steps of the Capitol and protest, laws about whatever that keep people safe. But as soon as you start doing the thing that endangers people, that's not right anymore. Right. And that's a big difference.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah.
Very well put. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or inspiring thoughts from our NAB, or questions for our filmmaker and participants? I know that it just inspired me on such a human level, and I want to see this film broadly seen because it does show how the commitment of regular folks can make a huge difference in somebody's consciousness about an issue.
And if I can add to that, and to me, it's about getting people to feel like this is so enormous, and it's easy to say, what can I do? What can one person do? But this film is about energizing people to say, you can do something. I mean, when COP26, was coming up, I think a lot of us held out some hope. Wow, maybe there's going to be some agreement here that's going to really jumpstart things and move us forward to feel like we're getting somewhere. And then COP26 is over, and it's like we were undermined. We were cut off at the knees. Nothing significant, in my view, was done. So there's science, and there's scientists who are putting things forward and telling us. One positive thing is, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the 4 or 5 newspapers that I follow rarely talked about climate change.
Yeah.
Now, just like they have a sports section, they have a climate change section, and they're telling all kinds of things there. But I think that what we need to do is to just get people to feel like they can get involved, they can do something, they can be significant in their own way. And if we can get that tipping point of people where, thousands of people get in the street over and over again, and at times hundreds of thousands of people get in the streets, then the greenwashing and the baloney that even the Democrats are putting out there about the insignificant changes they're planning to make will change, and we'll be able to move this forward, I feel.
I think we have time. Go ahead, Aji, add to that, and then we'll go to some of the questions.
Very, very quickly, I wanted to point out that there isn't such thing as somebody who's not involved in this.
Yeah.
We're all involved in it. And I think that's the important thing. It's not about getting involved. You are involved. It's about understanding your role and how you can affect the change you want to see. That everybody can affect the change they want to see, because you're already involved in it. Every decision you make, every action you take has an effect on it. Like I said, it's an ethos that we need to live by, rather than this idea that it's an action or a thing we do. It's not a thing we do, it's the way we are. And that needs to be understood, I think.
I think that's really important. I just want to turn it over to Peter for a second, because I love the Dalai Lama aspect, Peter, of what you said. I think that's an amusing way to think about things.
Thank you. My head is full of useless spokes that sometimes come up helpful, but if I could remember where I put the shampoo, that might help me better.
But what about, tell us about your mosquito?
Well, it's just a quote from the I've heard it attributed to Dalai Lama. I have that confirmed from TED, but it's just like, if you're too small to make a difference, I can't do anything, yada, 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 yada. And then you say, oh, but what about a mosquito? Is that annoying? Does that make you change your behavior? And you're bigger than a mosquito. I mean, I weigh 200 pounds. That's a lot. That's a hell of a lot of mosquitoes. So.
Thanks. Also, Matt.
I'd like to add to this.
Yeah, sure.
I carried a sign that said that on the climate march. And the quote that I carried from the Dalai Lama was, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's something that's important for all of us to think about. There's nothing too small, but we have to do something constantly. And I love Aji talking about it's every single, it's all the choices you make, where you shop, what you do, what you refuse to do. But Matt Schwartz, would you like to ask your question? Is Matt still with us? Yeah, Matt. Hi.
Hi. I'm trying. Yeah, there we go. Here I am. So I just basically wanted to find out if there were any outcomes, any communications from any organizations people of influence regarding addressing climate change in an effective way. Any surprises for the filmmaker or the producers, anything that came out of this film thus far in your experience?
Well, I've had tremendous support. We've done this type of panel discussion along with screenings with many of the climate organizations from 350.org to Gore's group. I can't remember what their name, to
Climate reality.
yeah, and to Greenpeace and other organizations, religious organizations. Julia said here on the chat that while she's extremely sympathetic to the cause, she doesn't support the tactics. I suppose she means civil disobedience. The thing is that, you read this article about the oceans, already being at a point of no return. You see how far along climate change is, and even if we changed everything today, it would continue to get worse for 25, 30 years or so. There's one thing to, take the facts and put them in the paper and hope that someone reads it and is moved by it. And there's another approach, which is, we're going to demand that people pay attention to this. And in social movements throughout history, people have had to demand that there are changes. It hasn't always succeeded when people politely waited for their representative to get around to getting on board and passing some law that will maybe make a significant enough change to make an impact.
Thanks, and I want to recognize Kathy as an early supporter, I think executive producer of the film. And
yes, she is. She was great. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you. I think Nancy's the one that got me in touch with Joe, so thank you, Nancy. But there are just a couple of thoughts that I wanted to chime in with. Jumping back to the mosquito conversation, I'll just add that I know there was part of the effort so I live in Seattle, and with all of the protests around the Polar Pioneer here, there was a lot more going on than just the day that it tried to leave and those people got arrested. There were some very big days of protest out on the water. And part of all of that was an entity sort of anchored out in the bay called the Mosquito Fleet, based exactly on that idea. So I think that's a really key point. But also part of that I wanted to bring up is realizing that there were hundreds, if not 1,000 people out on the water on one of those days that didn't get arrested, which is to say, like, it's not like there's the only choice is you suddenly
Absolutely.
end up in trial in North Dakota and going to jail. But there's certainly lots of ways that people can engage, and I think all of it is important. Sorry, that's my dog barking in the background. But and so just encourage us all to keep that in mind. And I had another point, but my dog is distracting me.
We can come back to you, Kathy, but I wanted to recognize.
Thank you for all your help, Kathy, moving this film forward.
Yeah.
It was invaluable.
Peter wanted to know kind of a practical thing. Miriam, how did the marchers get food and water and stuff? And did you have any backup transportation if somebody was really having a hard time? And how can, this is the toughest question, Peter. It's like, how can you really quantify in any way the impact of this amazing gesture made by the group?
Well, thank you for that question as well. There is no way to quantify it. And one of the things that I'm very aware of is that we can never, ever know our ripple effects. Once in a while, one comes splashing back towards us, but mostly ripple effects just go out and out and out, and we can't quantify them. So about the march, we had a gear truck. I was 71 when I walked 7 million steps across this country, and I could not have carried my gear on my back. We had a gear truck to carry our personal gear and our camping gear. We camped most nights. And we had a kitchen truck that volunteers, those of us who were marching, but not every step, cooked our meals. I got up at 5:30 in the morning to help prep breakfast, even though I was going to march 15 miles that day. And we had a commode, which was waterless and chemical free, that went with us that we could use at our campgrounds. And every once in a while we had to dig a big hole and deposit what we needed to get rid of. We were very well equipped, and occasionally we got to stay in a home somewhere. They gave us a home visit. Oh my God, that was wonderful. We got to take a shower and eat a home cooked meal sitting at a table. People were wonderful to us across the country, just wonderful, except when they weren't. And in the Southwest, several times, I remember a big diesel truck would pull up beside us as we were going through some town or city, and then take off spewing diesel smoke all over us. And I remember in Phoenix, some guy in a truck at an intersection yelled out the window, "Hey, stupid, it's weather, it changes." So, you know, it wasn't all delight. It was a lot of work. It was very hard. And we did it. We did it because I guess this is the other thing I need to point out. The thing it changed the most wasn't the public, wasn't the legislatures, it was us. I started out that march considering myself a concerned citizen, and by the time I got to Washington, D.C., with everything I had seen and experienced, I called myself a climate action warrior. And keeping in mind, warrior in the Lakota language means protector. And I was up at Standing Rock 3 times and worked with those people.
Thank you. I mean, that's wonderful. I'm so touched by that. And I see Ted, you have your hand up. Do you want to say a quick comment?
A quick, well, I was going to make a larger comment, but I just had a quick question, Miriam, for you about, you mentioned the sort of the people that were low information and mean to the group, but in terms of the moments where you felt the most support, what were some of those?
We had rallies in most of the cities we passed through, and I have to point to a rally that we went to in, oh cripes, Northern City in New Mexico. I can't say the name of it.
Taos.
Not that far north. Anyway.
Albuquerque? No.
Yeah, I think it was Albuquerque. Thank you. A young woman, 12 years old, she was really a girl, that belonged to one of the indigenous nations there, spoke at that rally. And I tell you, that was one of the most moving things that happened for me in 8 months. And what she said was that whatever we do makes a difference, but whatever it does to us makes the most difference. Or words to that effect. And I can attest to it. I can attest to it.
This has been such a robust discussion, and I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. I think we have to move on, don't we, Natalie? But I want to give Joe and Aji and Miriam like the last word, a quick concise word. And I just want to say I'm so happy to see my colleagues from the NAB, and I look forward to spending more time with you. But Joe, do you want to be last or first?
I can be first. I'd like to, thank the people in this film because my goal in making a film like this is to do what I call capturing life in progress. So once I choose someone to be a potential subject, I try to hang around as much as I can to be as much in the picture, but not involved in just in the background. And so it's kind of an intimate way of being with folks, and it takes a lot of trust on their part. I know a lot of people at first, not necessarily the people who were in the final film, but I followed many more people than were in the film, looked to me like, you're from LA, how do we know that that you're on board with the level of commitment that we have with our community. And so I spent 5 years following folks for this film, and it took a lot of trust on their part, and I really appreciate that they allowed me into their lives so I could show the powerful story that they were involved in.
Aji, a final word?
Yeah. Thank you for engaging, for recognizing your responsibility, to your community around you and stuff, for watching the film. I don't know, it's good for me to see people who are aware and have their head up. I like to try and remind people that it's every action you take, you get the choice. On every action you take, you get to make a choice. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Keep on keeping on, and I hope you.
Yeah, and we'll be watching you too. And Miriam, final word for us.
Oh my goodness, that's a big burden.
I think your walk is enough, but
no, it's not enough.
You're right.
I belong to an organization called 100 Grannies for a Livable Future. It's a local group here in Johnson County, Iowa. And I think our average age is probably 70. And what I want to say, a lot of them have been arrested, but we do lots and lots of things. And we fight plastic and toxins on lawns and pipelines, you name it, we do it.
I love this.
70-year-old women can be stepping outside our comfort zone. Anybody can. And I guess my final word would be this: everything we do matters.
Yeah.
And I guess my final word is you folks are part of the ripple effect.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you to
Thank you all.
Joe and our panelists.
Thank you all.
Bravo, and we carry it forward.
So we'll drop off and you all can continue on, okay?
Or no, Natalie's got instructions.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have other folks joining us on a different Zoom link, so we'll give everybody a few minutes to stretch and join us back at about 10 till the hour to pick up the conversation with some UCS staff. So
Okay, thank you,
thank
Natalie.
you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Aji and
Miriam
Miriam.
and Nancy.
Kathy,
Take care.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much.